All right, this sounds a lot like my parties. When 4 of 6 invited guests decline coming, let's just say it is probably not the food. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. And for the White House, a serious case of etiquette egg on its face. Scrambling today to explain an RSVP summit plummet. Leaders from 4 of the 6 Persian Gulf nations invited have already sent their regrets, and they're coming up with the most creative of reasons. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister says his boss can't make it because Thursday's bowling night. No, I'm only kidding. Thursday's White House meeting coincides with a humanitarian ceasefire in Yemen. Never mind, President Obama had planned to carve out a special one-on-one meeting with the Saudi prince. Now that's clearly off, and this whole Persian Gulf summit could be off too. Word is many are opting out because they're not too keen on a president getting a little too cozy with Iran. So many figured the better part of valor was to just politely decline. But former Senator Scott Brown says there is nothing polite what's going on here. A lot of these guys are simply ticked and sharing FaceTime with the president. Many feel abandoned them in their fight against Iran. Well, it doesn't help matters any, and it goes a little beyond the pale, I guess. Senator, accepting an invite, right?
Well, I'd come to your party.
Yeah, well, you'd be the only one.
Well, sorry, we'd have a good time.
My worst moments in high school and college when I'd invite people and just wait.
Yeah, well, we'd have a lot of fun.
What do you make of this?
Listen, of course Kuwait's going to come because we obviously rescued their country. They're going to do whatever they can, and obviously I think that's appropriate. Clearly, there is a problem. They don't like the Iran deal. They don't trust what's happening with Iran and the United States. The president and Hillary Clinton, as his obviously Secretary of State, has been offending our allies and emboldening our enemies, and that's being reflected, I think, by this not attending.
Now, the whole idea of this was he was going to explain his overtures to Iran, explain why this deal, if it ever comes to pass, it makes good sense for not only world peace but the region and stability. Virtually to a man, they say that's ridiculous. It's not the case.
Yeah. Well, just pick up the phone, first of all. He could have been doing it throughout. What about Israel? Israel wasn't invited. They're obviously intimately involved with what's happening over there. I've said, and others have said, that they're dealing with Iran. You don't trust them. I don't trust them. Apparently Secretary Kerry does, and the President does, and Hillary Clinton does, but members of the U.S. Senate and Congress don't, because we don't know what the deal is.
But is that poor form, Senator? You were in that august chamber, that there are some things you just don't do because it just looks bad. So to not go or to send emissaries instead,
yeah, of course,
makes it
they're sending a message, and if you don't think that's the case, then you're not really paying attention. They could go. They would go. Obviously.
So you actually think this is a deliberate slight on them to go beyond? They want to offend.
I absolutely do. I think they want to draw a line in the sand, because if you know what's happening over there, the United States isn't being involved in a lot of the foreign policy decisions. Look what happened, when Germany took over, and Merkel was actually, drawing the line with Ukraine and Putin. So there's a lot of things that the United States, as a result of us not being there as leaders, others are coming into the fold and taking that role, and we're being basically pushed to being second fiddle. And I believe, and I've said this to you before, we live in the greatest country in the world. We are a world leader. We are a country.
But there are many libertarians in the party, many of whom were very keen on you when you first, ran for and shocked the world and took Teddy Kennedy's seat, who say, we've got to extract ourselves from this sort of stuff, that let them fight their battles in their region. What do you say to that?
I say that look what happened in Iraq. We left that void, and criminal elements and terrorist elements came in. And when we are not there, in some capacity, in a leadership form, you have others that will take that.
You know what I noticed, Senator? I mean, I noticed whether we're there or not, nuts come up.
Of course there are going to be nuts, but I'd rather have a nut when we're actually pushing back and keeping them there, and actually letting them stay there and pushing them and keeping them active there, than allowing them to come here and go to our allies and terrorize and kill them.
So what do you make of Rand Paul's argument that if we, very early on, he was making a slap at John McCain,
and they're kind of going at it,
and
aren't they?
Right. But more or less saying John McCain and others were keen on arming, Assad's enemies and insurgents, whatever you want to call them. That would have been helping ISIS in retrospect.
Well, right now I believe that's the case, but in the beginning, had we done it in the beginning, who we knew who Assad's enemies really were, which we did, they were the people in that country that just didn't like him and they wanted to overthrow him, that would have been a little different. But as we've gone on and on and on, it's morphed into we don't know who the heck's over there. So I don't necessarily disagree with them later in the game, but we were calling for intervention when they only killed 10,000 of their of their citizens. What are they at? 150, 200,000 of their own being killed as of right now?
So you think this will be a dominant issue and will last a dominant issue next year at this time and beyond?
Yeah, foreign policy is huge. That void that the President and Hillary Clinton have left, where they've ostracized us and they've emboldened our enemies, and that I believe and others believe it started in Syria when they drew that red line and the President did nothing. You see what's happening with a lot of our allies, with Putin and what he's doing in Ukraine and Crimea. Everyone's just waiting, and I think what's happening with the Saudi royal family is that they are kind of waiting and see what's going to happen. If we're going to marry up with Iran and we're going to actually give them the street cred that they really don't deserve, what's going to happen when the Saudis, when the Kuwaitis, when other countries
Who's the toughest, though, in foreign policy of the bunch that you see presently running? Of the 700 people now running for president, who would be the best foreign policy?
I like Marco right now.
Really?
I like Marco on foreign policy. Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham knows his foreign policy stuff, but I'm not sure.
He's called for boots on the ground, you know.
A lot of people have called for boots on the ground. It depends on where and under what circumstances. And I think Jeb Bush recognizes that his brother made the right decision. I agree with him.
You didn't mention Rand Paul, and you have not.
Well, I think Rand, I like Rand a lot. He's a dear friend, and he supported me. I think, however, he needs to really explain his foreign policy position. For us to just step back.
Well, that depends on the day.
If he wants us to just step back and let others do our battles for us, then why are we in Japan and Germany and Korea?
Fair enough. What about Chris Christie?
Chris is good. I'm not sure what his foreign policy experience is, and I look forward to hearing about it.
Do you ever want to jump into this race?
No.
As a running mate?
No, I'm going to let them have all the fun. I'm going to bring them through New Hampshire as I did with Chris.
You'd be a good bridge running mate if you think about it.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. It's time to go.
Commenting. Isn't that, it's fun. This isn't outnumbered, you know. You can't just leave
gosh,
like
please.
That. All right, thank you very much, Senator. We shall see. Well, forget Iran. Maybe we should be focusing on North Korea. To the Senator's point, it is taking a key step in its weapons program now, reporting that the communist country is test launching submarine missiles. It doesn't take much to, nuclear activate them. You know the drill. Captain Chuck Nash does too. He's worried. He wonders why the administration is not. So what's going on here, Captain? Is it that they have that capability, or are they just giving us the impression they have the capability?
Well, we don't know, but at this point, I think what we do know is that they are on a consistent march. If they can get money from the Iranians to develop things, they'll share that technology with the Iranians, and then they'll violate weapons protocols and agreements and just sell it to the highest bidder. So they have started with a nuclear program and a missile program. They've developed both in conjunction with each other, and now they're putting them on submarines, and of course submarines could get closer to our coast, and now you have a whole different scenario when it comes to EMP or any other kind of an attack. It becomes very, very real.
So the last time they did this kind of threatening and saber-rattling, where they were very close to this type of technology, they extracted concessions for us, or the sanctions would be relieved a little bit. That dates back to the Bush, even Clinton administrations. So I always feel through various parties they play us like a fiddle. How do we play this?
Well, one of the things that we should be doing is look back on that 1994 agreement with North Koreans that President Clinton negotiated, and he said that's where we're going to bring this pariah nation back into the community of nations, and they're going to stop and they're going to stand down their program, and we're going to have verifiable inspections and all that. Well, none of that happened, and here we are again, and what we're hearing this president say sounds eerily similar and very, very naive, as did President Clinton's statement. So,
well, it wasn't much better with President Bush, right? I guess the only reason why I'm saying it is we have a long track record with a country that has been lying to us for a long time and uses sanctions with the hope that they can get some relief from us as a sort of a bargaining chip. What do we do?
Well, and the same thing goes all the way back, by the way, administration after administration, all the way back to President Carter. When
and don't even get me started on Millard Fillmore, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I mean? What do we do now? I think obviously this nut has got a lot of technology that we had hoped and Brady didn't, but it appears from experts, certainly like yourself, that he does, or is close to it. So is it already too late?
It may already be too late as far as the nuclear weapons part goes. They've detonated some low-yield events that the intelligence community said, well, they were failures. Well, what if they weren't failures? What if they were low-yield but designed specifically to do EMP, which is a whole very, very serious thing here that Congress has voted to fix on our power grid, but has never appropriated money to do. So what do we do, to answer your question directly? I think what we do is, first and foremost, don't make it any worse by signing up to a deal with the Iranians that's going to turn out like the one with the North Koreans. We've got to have muscle behind this. And if we start releasing the tourniquet before we've repaired the tissue damage, we're going to have blood all over.
I get the visuals there. Captain, always good seeing you, my friend. I appreciate it, Captain Nash.
You bet, Neil.
So, maybe come next year, it is not the economy stupid. It is staying alive stupid. It is keeping us safe stupid. It is who is going to do a better job on foreign policy stupid. To Mercedes Schlapp, David Asman, on how this will play out for an ever wider field of GOP candidates. Dave, what do you think?
Well, it reminds me of 1980 when, surprise, surprise, Iran was in the center of our foreign policy concerns. I mean, we had a situation where they had actually taken over an embassy, had all of our hostages there. Thankfully, we don't have the same situation. But again, Iran is at the center of the country. The bottom line is Saudi Arabia, one of our closest allies in the Middle East, is now a closer ally of Israel than it is of the United States. Yeah. It's bizarre. That was part of what was bizarre about what was happening in 1980, and it's what made the electorate say, we need a change. And I think some of that might go on in the next election here.
Who of that cast of characters then, Mercedes, stands out? I mean, the obvious argument is for someone who's going to be very strong on defense, so typically you hear from Scott Brown and others, that's not a Rand Paul, that might not be a governor, for example, who has very limited experience in that regard. I don't know if that always pans out. But what do you think of that, and who seems to have that edge of the field thus far?
Sure. There are several candidates that I think are very strong on the foreign policy angle. Obviously, Senator Marco Rubio is probably one of the stronger ones just because he's been on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for some time. He also knows how to eloquently explain his positions when it comes to these different foreign policy perspectives. With that being said, you're seeing Governor Walker going off to Israel and what he calls it as sort of an educational tour. And then Governor Jeb Bush, I think we're going to see, obviously, he has a very strong foreign policy advisors on his team. He understands the complexities as well. So again, I think besides having someone with depth of foreign policy, the other point here is execution. Right. Who is the one that can have the leadership and can actually, make the necessary changes in the foreign policy perspective?
Can I be a little counterintuitive? Because Jimmy Carter was recognized. You knew Jimmy Carter a little bit, didn't you? Work in his. Okay, all right. But the bottom line is, he was recognized as a genius. Everybody thought he was a genius. He was going to solve all the problems, economic and foreign policy. Ronald Reagan was thought of as a, kind of a what did they call him? A fumbling idiot. Some of his critics. He ended up winning the Cold War. So sometimes the so-called experts like Hillary Clinton and Jimmy Carter, who know the foreign policy field, actually execute, to use her words, a lot worse.
By the way, experience in the field doesn't necessarily translate into results. So I'm wondering if that is something that might favor a dark horse in this race we're not appreciating. Could it be? I know you touched on, say, the idea of a governor from Wisconsin, or I don't even know Chris Christie, but does it have to be a senator?
I don't think it has to be a senator at all. I think, going to David's point, I mean, we saw Ronald Reagan, who was a governor, being able to go after and fight off and win the Cold War. I think that, Senator Rubio tried to make that point, that the governors, can they really lead that first day? And I have to tell you, you look at a Governor Jeb Bush or a Governor Scott Walker, even look at Carly Fiorina. These are people that what you're looking for is character, leadership qualities, people who can make a decision, people who actually understand the concept between good and evil.
Wait a minute, I thought we were talking about politics here and politicians.
But she makes a point, Dave, whether it hurts you in this environment to be a governor rather than a senator. Yeah. Who has the experience on the floor, for whatever that's worth.
Well, I think the American people now, because of the foreign policy disasters, are realizing they need somebody who has that real-life experience, who can stand up to a leader who's obviously lying and say, you're lying, I don't buy it. And we haven't had a straight talker like that in a long time.
But you're a hater.
I'm a lover. I love you.
Guys,
that tie is magnificent.
Look at the time. Guys, thank you both very, very much. Well, at least things are looking better in China, right? Their market storming back once investors heard the country was once again cutting interest rates. What they ignored, of course, was why China is cutting interest rates. Let's just say on the other side of the world, in a world of hurt.